Hey, 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 this is Dr. Jonathan Shepard here. Another Friday evening edition of Ask the Doctors, sponsored by Hope Health Systems in Woodlawn, Maryland. It is so good to see all of you out there. Please come on in the room. Please come on in and share, network with your friends, with your family. It is good to see you. One more week. We have survived. It's been a particularly tough week for myself personally, but I have made it here to see and be with you all once again. And just want to say thank you. Thank you for all those who are watching consistently every week. I want to say thank you to all those who go back and replay each video, each episode. There are so many of you all who go back and replay, and I am so absolutely grateful. I have a spirit of gratitude for all of those who do that. I just want to send a shout out to all the employees of Hope Health Systems, the clinicians, the physicians, providers, even front office staff. I am so glad to see that you are tuned in. I see Susan Smith is commenting already this evening. Angela Pinkney, the Reverend Mega Reed is on. And so thankful again to see you all here on a Friday evening. Let me tell you, I wish I had better news today. Oh, wow. Sheila Edwards. Hello from Germany. All right. And I always tell people that we do get visitors from international. That's probably because of Dr. Varner and his scope of relationships. And we'll talk about that once he comes on. But again, welcome. Man, please share. We have got an interesting discussion for you today. I'm telling you, you need to get your coffee, get your water, whatever you need to do to get yourself set to maintain throughout this episode. But let me just come on, as I was about to say earlier, we are going through some tough times in America right now, as we all know. I was just sharing with our guests as we were preparing to start the show that we're literally experiencing a 9/11 every day now. What do you mean, Dr. Shepard, that we're experiencing a 9/11 every day? The number of people that died on 9/11 in 2001 are now occurring every single day in America. Let me say that again. The number of people that died in one day, 9/11, we're experiencing now in this pandemic where those numbers are occurring on a daily basis. Wow. That is mind-boggling. And yet we still have people who don't believe that the coronavirus is real. Well, it's our job to come on to share information, insightful information, to keep you safe and from harm, to keep you informed, not to scare you, but to keep you in such a way and that you will want to do better and move forward. And so I am so excited that you have joined us today. Just giving you a little bit more time to come on in and share. Want to send a shout out to all the folks out there in Chicago who are watching. I got my alumni sweatshirt on from my high school, Homewood Flossmoor High School. I know there's some haters out there. That's all right. Homewood Flossmoor Vikings. Yeah. So I wanted to just send a shout out to them and to all those folks who are out there. So let's get this show started because we have some important topics to deal with. We have some special guests who are with me today. One guest who has never been with me today, and we will save her for last. I would say the best for last, but we're going to bring on my friend, my brother, Dr. Godfrey Varner, who is with us today. Hey, sir, how you doing?
Dr. Shepard, how are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's good to see you. How are you?
I am doing well, and you're right. The world's changed a great deal since the last time that we spoke. Hey.
Yeah, it has, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about what has shifted. I think the last time we were together was in October, and so even in just 2 months, things have greatly changed. And I see our our partner from last time in October. He has joined us, the Dr. Terrence Roan. I'm going to bring him on, let him come on and greet us. Now, Dr. Roan is well, I'll let him tell himself what he does. So, hey, Doc, how you doing?
How do you do?
Oh, sir, I'm doing okay. How you doing today?
Oh, good. Got a full clinic today, so I'm in and out. But I was able to break away. I got a little break in the action here.
Yes, sir.
Pulmonary critical care. I've been practicing for 23 years, and it's been a real joy. I love doing what I do, and I will say that this is one of the most challenging times in my career. I'm sure for all of us, in all respects, challenging trying to deal with this virus and trying to do what we can to aid the general public. I'm excited about your guest today, and especially the young lady that you're going to introduce shortly. Really looking forward to hearing what she has to say, and I'll stay on as long as I can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. And coming on now, Dr. Jessica Queen. We have her. Yes. Yes. Welcome. We are so happy to have you. Come on, Jessica, tell us about yourself, what you do.
Well, thank you for having me on, Dr. Shepard. So I'm an infectious disease physician and scientist. I currently work at Johns Hopkins, although I'm not on here representing my employer. And I spend my time both seeing patients with infections and doing research in a lab.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's a MD, PhD. She ain't nothing to play with.
A lot of time in school.
Well, this is great. So let's go ahead and get this discussion started, jumped off. Dr. Varner, let's start with you. I put the first question out there. What have you seen that has shifted since the last time we talked in October? What have you seen coming through the emergency room? And let me just say this before you start. I have purposely set up the people who are here today because I want to start with once they enter into the hospital, get into the hospital, and then to see what the research is for when they come out the hospital and how to be able to treat them. So there was some thought process in mind on the guest that was asked to be on here today. So let's start with you, sir. Let's see what is happening that's changed since October, and what are you seeing at the front door of the hospital?
Thank you very, very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Joffrey Mount Varn. I'm a board-certified emergency medicine physician. I'm also a crisis and split-second decisions expert. I am practicing on the front lines in the ER. I worked a night shift the other night. What is changing about the emergency department is that the volumes are going up tremendously. Wow. People are still coming in. They are sicker than what they were, say, 2 months ago, because we experienced that lull. But I'm also seeing and witnessing and hearing that I think that there's what is going on is that a lot of people are getting tired. When you talk about when you have a COVID patient and you're just talking to them, and you're trying to figure out where they picked it up, and while we don't know, you start hearing stories about when they were wearing masks and not wearing masks, gatherings that they had gone to, and just as a public service announcement, there are 5 places that are associated with 80% of the transmissions. Those are restaurants, bars, cafes, hotels, and houses of worship, with restaurants, indoor dining making up 40% of those infections. I say that to say, I get it. People need to get out, but this is not the time to go someplace and dine inside. So I would encourage everyone that while you're getting tired, I would bet you that you're not tired of living or you're not tired of your loved ones living.
Wow. Can you give me those 5 places again?
Yes. Restaurants, which make up, 80% of the transmissions come from restaurants, bars, cafes, hotels, and houses of worship, with the restaurants making up 40% of that 80%.
Wow. Okay. Well, you have just shut me down, sir. I will not be going to Ruth Chris tonight. All right. Uh, thank you. And if you're in Baltimore, and Jessica can speak to this, the mayor has just shut down the indoor dining and outdoor dining in the city of Baltimore as of 5 o'clock tonight.
Mhm.
And that
It's
is happening at different. But what'd you say?
about time.
Is that about time?
Yeah.
Wow. 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 And I'm going to tell you right now, some folks are not happy that you just said that. Yeah. So let's just flow with that. Why did you say about time?
So, personally, I have not dined in or outside a restaurant since February because, as Dr. Varner pointed out, dining with other people is a high risk activity. And, I think all the decisions we make about the risks we're willing to take are, they're personal, but they're also community decisions. And you have to weigh risks and benefits. And I just don't think eating restaurant food is worth the risk to me. So I try to support local businesses by ordering food for takeout occasionally. And otherwise, I'm just flexing my cooking skills in the meantime.
Hey, flex them. That's what I'm. I need to work mine out some more.
Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Dr. Rohn,
Yes, sir.
so what are you seeing? Dr. Varner mentioned that he's seeing people coming in sicker. So once they get admitted to the hospital, we know that COVID-19 tends to attack the lungs primarily or predominantly, from what I'm understanding. So,
Mhm.
so what are you seeing, sir?
Well, the people that get past Dr. Jeffrey Varner and get actually admitted, those are the folks that I'm dealing with. So if they're being admitted, they probably have some respiratory issue or the potential to develop one. The things that I'm impressed with right now is, number one, the demographic. The demographic in Southern California has changed. It began with African Americans. Matter of fact, several churches in our network of Church of God in Christ lost members. One pastor, dear friend of mine, former pastor, actually lost 4 members in March. Dear people, wonderful people. But as we've gone on, my patient populace in the Inland Empire is shifted primarily to Hispanic, Mexican American, Latino. Overwhelmingly, almost, I've rounded several weeks for the last few months, and every weekend I'm on call. Most of them are Hispanic. I've seen very few African Americans and maybe one white person the whole time. It's amazing how many Mexican Americans are coming in, but the demographic is actually plays into the epidemiology of the situation. People gathering, large number of people living in a small house, eating together, fellowshipping together, ignoring the rules. Packing people in houses and celebrating birthdays and quinceañeras and that kind of thing. Just going through life, and that's actually what playing into it. The other thing is that the volume out here is outrageous. In Southern California, we're on red alert. The hospital that I work at, one of them, San Antonio Hospital, is on, they call it internal disaster. That's what they're calling it right now. We have no beds. We got nowhere to put people. They're saying don't even do an ambulance run out here. I got another call from another hospital of mine. They have an oxygen crisis. We ran out of oxygen. It's turning into New York out here, just like New York. It's turning into that right now.
Wow.
We are projected to have a spike and a populace of sick people similar to what was happening in New York earlier in this year. The other thing I would say to you is that we're running out of beds for people in the hospital. I lost a patient last week, Dr. Shepard. The guy had been in there for about 2 weeks. He had started bleeding because we were prophylaxing him with heparin. That's what we do now because the risk of a hypercoagulable state because of this disease. Well, every once in a while you find, and I've never seen this happen, where a guy will internally bleed because of the prophylaxis. He was not fully anticoagulated, just heparin 5,000 Q
Mm.
12. And that's no everybody can take that usually. The dude bled retroperitoneally. He dropped his crit to 5, his hemoglobin to 5.4.
Oh.
We transfused him. He was still bleeding. I had to start left norepinephrine. I couldn't because he was on the floor. I said, give me an ICU bed. We don't have an ICU bed. You can run dopamine, but you only run dopamine at 3 mics per kilogram per minute, which is not going to help me. So I struggled with this guy all night. I had no place to put him. They wouldn't let me run the drugs I needed to because he wasn't in the ICU. And by the morning, he actually crashed and died. I had no bed to put him in. The man could have been saved had we started earlier. I've never had that happen to me before. There was no place to put him. I've heard about it, but the reality set in for me. This is really an issue. Now, just think if that happened to a guy that was in the hospital. Think of all the people that are outside the hospital that they can't get in. My daughter works at UC Riverside. They're putting patients, med-surg patients, in the post-labor and delivering rooms or ward. What do you call it? After you have the baby.
Postpartum.
That's it. Thank you. They're putting med-surg people in there now because they got no place to put people. It's this. We're running out of beds out here. We're 90%. Well, last week we were 90% occupancy in the ICU everywhere in Southern California. It's probably worse now. So that's what I'm seeing right now. It's getting horrible out here.
Wow. Wow. Woo. Thank you for sharing, sir. That's a touching story. And so for anyone out there who does not believe that it is real, it is real. And what I want to do is I want to shift because so much of the discussion has talked about so many of the devastating stories and the tragedies that we have experienced during this pandemic. And I tell you, this is something that we will never, ever forget, as it has turned out to be one of the worst, if not the worst, public health crisis that we've ever experienced in our lifetime. So, Dr. Varner, Dr. Queen, I want to shift now because what I am hearing is that we have vaccines that are on the way. Now, we know that they are out there because everybody's been talking about them. But what I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive, more than just saying that vaccine or help is on the way. I want to talk about it. And then I have $1 million question for you at the end. And so that $1 million question, I'll wait. So that keep people in a little bit of suspense. But let's just talk about it. So there is a operation called Operation Warp Speed. I think I have that correct. So with that name, all right, it's bothering me. Just the whole naming of Warp Speed. And this operation and the naming of it is affecting people's psyche about getting a potential vaccine. So I want you, Dr. Varner, to speak to that first, and then Dr. Queen come behind and let's tackle that. How do we handle this with this naming of Operation Warp Speed? Because I'll be honest with you, that name does bother me.
Thank you very much for that. Let me wrap this up into what I would call one of the most common myths for people choosing not to get the vaccines. That most people say it was developed too fast. Well, technically they're right, but it just bear with me. Usually it takes about 54 months to develop a vaccine. True, we did COVID in 14 months, but here's why, and just follow me on this one. In the past, there's a preclinical stage, there's a clinical stage, there's a manufacturing phase, and there's a distribution phase. Most of that 54 months is spent in the manufacturing and the distribution phase.
Okay. And
you usually go one step, next step, next step. Because of all the money that was put in this, we were doing it in parallel. We did it simultaneously. So most of that time that would have been spent in the manufacturing and the distribution phase was not.
Okay.
Then your audience is going to want to know, well, did we rush the preclinical and the clinical stage? No. Here, the reason why those stages are usually longer is that you have to get volunteers. Fortunately, our fellow Americans and our fellow citizens across the world stepped up, raised their hand, and volunteered. So we were able to go through phase 1 quickly, phase 2, and phase 3. And unfortunately, there was enough disease that was in the community that we got enough infections so that we had two groups. Let's be clear, no one was purposely infected. In summary, I get why people think that this was done fast. However, there were reasons why for that. And then let me just comment on this other thing. People are commenting about this new mRNA technology. Well, it's new to the world. We've been studying mRNA technology for the last 20 years. We have just never used it on this grand scale.
Dr. Queen, come on and give us some insight.
Yes. So, I mean, echoing what Dr. Varner said, a big part of why this has happened so quickly is because the government put money behind it. They invested billions in making sure that these vaccines were developed. Whereas typically that money, depends on the level of investment that the individual pharmaceutical companies have. I also want to point out that there are dozens of potential candidate vaccines in different stages of the process. 5 of them are in the phase 3 trials. And the one that is closest to being FDA approved, the Pfizer vaccine, they actually didn't get money from the Operation Warp Speed upfront. The only money they've gotten from the government is now that it's clear that it's likely going to be approved any day now, is the government purchased $2 billion of advanced sort of doses of the vaccine. Mm-hmm. So, I hope that can give people maybe a little bit of reassurance if their concern is about this name Warp Speed, which I agree has a bit of bad PR, or the association with, our current White House, that money did not actually go toward development of the vaccine that is going to come out first.
Wow. Thank you. I did not know that. So you just dispel a myth. And so that's one of the things I do on this show, bust up myths. So I appreciate that. So the money that was coming from the federal government did not go to Pfizer to help create that vaccine. Am I stating that correctly?
Correct. That's my understanding.
That is correct.
I have a question. Is the same thing true for the other companies like Moderna? They all had to put up their own money to get it going, but then the government's purchasing from them as they do with Pfizer. Is that the same paradigm?
I believe Moderna, they were one of the recipients of the sort of seed money from the government. And then, all of these companies have put forth millions, billions of their own money, anticipating large profits.
Were you going to say something, Dr. Varner?
Yeah, so that was a great question, Dr. Ronan, and Dr. Queen hit on as well. So there are 49 different vaccination studies and trials that are going on. But the 4 main front runners are Pfizer, which did not get money, Moderna, which got money, AstraZeneca, Oxford, which got money, and Johnson & Johnson. Here's the catch. Pfizer's very clear. They're going to make money. They're into this for a profit. But AstraZeneca, Oxford, they're very clear. They're not going to make any money. Their whole goal is to vaccinate billions of people across the world. So this bit about they're just in it for the money, not at all. AstraZeneca is very clear. They're not going to make any money.
But that doesn't make me feel good knowing that Pfizer is looking to make a profit and AstraZeneca is saying that I'm not looking to make a profit. We're just in it to help mankind. So you saying that doesn't make me feel any better. And I'm sure somebody out there probably felt the same way that.
Let me articulate what they're feeling. Mm-hmm. When you say that, what I think is, yeah, that's what you say, but you're making money somewhere. I mean, you're a business. You're a business.
Yeah.
You're going to you don't invest billions of dollars out of your business just because you want to make people feel good. You're doing this for a reason. You are looking to get paid somewhere in the process. Right now, they're saying that, but people that just heard you say that, Dr. Werner, they're very suspicious, and they're going to say, hey, yeah, we may not be able to see it now, but it's somewhere along the line they're going to get paid. What do you think, Dr. Werner? Do you think that somehow they'll get paid somewhere along the line?
Um,
Is it all Radix?
I would just be guessing, but what I do know is that Pfizer and Moderna use new technology, which was very expensive, and even how they have to store it. The company picks up that the subclinical, the sub-zero freezers and all that. Whereas the AstraZeneca Oxford regular refrigerator, it can be transported for like miles and stay at room temperature for like several hours. So I can see why Pfizer and Moderna, which are for-profit companies, why they were in it for the money. But Dr. Rome, I do see your point that AstraZeneca Oxford, they may have something in it on the tail end, but I would just be guessing.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Queen, do you know where we are as far as with AstraZeneca and Oxford? These names trip me up all the time. Do you know where we are as far as their development of the vaccine? Because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't AstraZeneca the one that said that they had to go back and review their study guidelines because they had I won't use the word misled, but they were saying that there was something wrong with their the protocol that they had put out. Help me out a little bit. I think that was right with AstraZeneca.
So my understanding is that they've released some preliminary data showing efficacy and safety, and they, like many of these large trials, had groups that got different doses and dosing schedules.
That's it. Yeah.
And they have groups in, I think, 4 different countries. And so the efficacy data differs based on which part of the study you're looking at.
Gotcha.
So my understanding is that if you pool all of their data together, the overall efficacy is 70%. But if you look at sort of the group where they seem to have found the best dosing combination, it's closer to 90%. So I think that might have been some of the confusion and miscommunication.
Dr. Queen, as I recall, wasn't it AstraZeneca that had some adverse reactions and they had to halt the process somewhere around do you remember hearing about that? That they had, I think it was in the UK, they had a couple of people that had some adverse responses that they had to document.
I'm not certain about that.
Yes, you are correct. But you are absolutely correct. But that's typical when they develop vaccines.
Very true.
If there is a for lack of a better word, a side effect that was not expected, they tend to halt the study just to take a look at every single piece. But then they were able to continue with their study.
Very good. Thank you.
Gotcha. Well, this is good. Thank you for all those who are commenting. We have such a robust discussion happening right now. And so what I want to do, I want to take some questions from the comment section, and then we're going to jump back into some of the questions that we have already structured. And I'm not going to go in any certain order. I just want to pick out some of the questions quickly. Thank you for all those who are watching. Man, such a robust community that is out there right now. So here's a question. We're going to talk a little bit about children. We have not spoken. People know that area is near and dear to my heart. And so here's the question. Why is there so much uncertainty regarding the vaccination effects on children, as well as persons with various diseases, and in particular autoimmune diseases? And so I know I can answer just a little bit of that, but why don't we, who wants to tackle that question first?
That sounds like a Dr. Queen question.
Or Varner, or either.
I can start. So I think in general, in both vaccine studies on new drugs, et cetera, we often tend to study them first in adult populations, people who aren't pregnant, people who don't have severe immune compromise or severe pre-existing conditions. That's, in a sense, kind of the standard approach. That you want to start with, a representative pool of the population, but a little bit of a relatively healthier study population, so that if you do have unexpected adverse effects, you're not testing it first on children. So I do know that the Moderna vaccine, which is probably coming up second in the pipeline, they made an effort to enroll a lot of people over 65, people with pre-existing chronic conditions, and racial and ethnic minorities that are particularly affected by the COVID pandemic. So I think that's a particular strength of that trial, where they really tried to highlight those populations. The Pfizer study, in terms of people with pre-existing immune conditions, they did include people with HIV, but they're doing a separate analysis of that study population, and that data is not public yet.
Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna start asking more questions. So let's look at this next one. This is interesting. I had not heard this. Why was there an initial thought that the COVID vaccine would have blood or blood fractions? I now hear that there are no blood or blood fractions in the COVID vaccine. Had you all heard about this?
I'm not sure what that means.
Okay. All right. Anybody know?
They were thinking about treatment with plasma, which is a blood product that includes antibodies. That would be separate from the vaccine.
Right.
Good point.
Okay. All right. Great. Is it true if people need EpiPens, should they not get the vaccine, hearing that they have adverse side effects? I know Dr. Varner, Dr. Queen, we were talking about this prior to the beginning of this show, saying that there were 2 healthcare workers in the UK known to have a adverse reaction who have a history of severe allergies. So I don't know, Varner, you want to start first? Do you know anything to that?
Yes, currently that is not the recommendation, and that if you have allergies, that you should not get the vaccination. Why is that? Because there are millions of people who are walking around with EpiPens in their bags and their purses, and most of them have never used it. So that's currently not the recommendation for you not to get the vaccine. As we all know, this is a moving movie, and so they may change that, but like currently that's not a contraindication, meaning a reason not to get a vaccine.
Gotcha. Dr. Rohn, let's see, tackle this one. 40% of the cases coming from restaurants is concerning. Why is it so high?
Well, because even though you're using precautions in distancing at the tables, and they put up these plastic shields in some cases, not all of them, you got to take your mask off to eat. So, you're being cautious and careful. I was thinking about that the other day. My wife and I went to a restaurant because in Orange County, we were permitting in-house dining for a while. We were sitting there. We were cautious. The waitress had her mask on. She was standing 6 feet from the table, and she was doing all this stuff. But once the time came time to eat, you got to take your mask off. And then, since this thing is airborne, and we know that it's not just respiratory droplet transmission, but now it can kind of float in the air, which is really creepy to me. That's maybe the mechanism of transmission, is that while you're eating, you're catching whatever is floating through the air. So that's what makes it very dangerous, frankly. And Dr. Varner, thank you for that stat. 40%, man, that's powerful. But let me take it to another level. Now, I'm a pastor. Okay, that's my weekend job, right? Okay, so we've been live streaming since March because I don't feel safe and comfortable bringing people into our sanctuary yet because of these high numbers. And our R1 values in my county are 1.5. So that means one person has the ability to affect several other people, which means you're in pandemic mode. There are people down the street of other persuasions, racially speaking, who are actually mocking the people who wear masks, saying if you had faith, you wouldn't worry about it. And they're congregating and they're standing shoulder to shoulder and have people not wearing masks. And now they're beginning to get infected. And now they're getting worried. But they've been having church since May because the same thing, the transmission. They're not wearing masks, not exercising social distancing. And you're in the sanctuary, you're praising God, you're feeling the spirit. But at the same time, virus is floating around. So being inside is just not a good idea right now. There's too much virus. The population, the infected population, help me, Dr. Queen, is just too dense to permit large gatherings of people. And I feel bad because we don't have a uniform policy from coast to coast. My pastoral friends on your side of the woods have been having church, like in Alabama and down in Georgia. They've been having church since July, coming together. And there's one pastor in your area not too far from you. He didn't wear a mask. His people don't wear masks, and they're just ignoring like there's no virus. And these are Black people, you know. So we really need a uniform policy about what we're going to do. I believe if we were more uniform, I think we could actually shut this down sooner. But because it's a different rule for every state, for every county in every state, and there's no continuity or consistency, I think that's why we are where we are right now. That's why we're going into another year with the same stuff and having all this happen to us.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Varner.
Dr. Roan just, great point about the mask. So everyone just about the mask and the vaccine and bringing those conversations together. Just keep in mind that Pfizer is only, we only purchased 20 million vaccination shots from Pfizer. There's 350 million people in this country. But on the current modeling, in terms of how we're going to give it out, by April 1st, the vaccine would only save 9,000 lives. Wow. But if people start wearing a mask today, if 95% of people start wearing a mask, we can save 70,000 lives by April 1st. And, right. And the one thing that I noticed that is throwing people off is that the vaccine's here, and so we are good. Everyone keep in mind, we won't experience a real positive effect from the vaccine to probably May, assuming that the vaccination rollout happens the way that we plan. And just as a side note, nothing I say should be taken as medical advice. It's just for information purposes only. I have a feeling that Dr. Queen and Dr. Roan and Dr. Shepard agree with that. Again, nothing we say should be taken as medical advice. It's for information purposes only. Please go to your primary care doctor.
Disclaimer.
Absolutely. Thank you. I need to have that scrolling across.
Right.
The next time we're on, I will have that.
You should.
I guarantee you. And who knows? And while you all are talking, I might get too busy doing that. Real quick, Dr. Varner, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Queen. Someone wants you to repeat the stats for the high risk locations again that you stated at the very beginning of the show. If you don't mind just stating those 5 spots again.
Sure. They are houses of worship, hotels, cafes, bars, and restaurants make up 80% of the transmissions, with restaurants making up 40%. But since you hand me the mic again, I'm going to make a comment. So Dr. Roan was talking about those pastors who are still having church. You are irresponsible and you are wrong. It makes no sense for anyone to be having church. And so you can't turn this into a racial issue for any reason. There's no large gatherings. It's as simple as that.
All right. Amen. I'll move it on. I'm not a pastor, so you can't get me in trouble. Let's ask this question here. Samuel Lee Roberts. If this is airborne, I'm confused. I had a mask and a face covering. I was in a grocery store and clearly smelled perfume when someone walked by. If I can smell perfume while masked, could COVID be transmitted while masked up?
Good question.
Want to take that on, Queen, Dr. Queen?
Sure. So it's a good question. So the short answer is that masks of all sorts are quite effective at protecting you, but none of them are 100%. And your risk of contracting COVID depends on the kind of mask you're wearing, and if you're wearing it appropriately, covering your nose and your mouth, whether the person near you, say a hypothetical infected person, whether they are wearing a mask and what kind, how close you are to them, how many minutes you spend in close proximity, And then are they symptomatic? Are they actively coughing, sneezing, et cetera, and spreading droplets? So, that math is complicated, but there have been a number of really nice published studies sort of looking at all of those factors. Are you indoors in an enclosed space? If you are, how good's the airflow, et cetera? So, in general, the so-called N95 masks that we wear in the hospital give you about 95% protection. We have an example from Dr. Rohn, and that's why they're called N95. And then we have surgical masks that are not as good as the N95s. Here we have another example. And then sort of below that would be a cloth mask or a bandana. And okay that you don't have one of those handy. So the answer is it depends. I would just say in general, shopping in the grocery store, if you are wearing a mask and then, the rule of masking is enforced for the rest of the people shopping, and you're not standing close to somebody for more than 15 minutes having an unnecessarily long conversation, then your risk of contracting COVID in the store is quite low.
Can I ask a question, Dr. Queen? One of the protocols that we have in my clinic, I'm in the clinic today, and one of our protocols is that for these, they're telling us that you need to change these every 3 to 4 hours, because the longer you wear them, I guess, the less protection they confer. I guess because you're breathing in and out and you're, disintegrating the fibers. Have you heard about that, Dr. Queen? Can you comment on that?
I'm not aware of sort of any detailed studies on that. I will say in general, because of shortages in protective gear, we are all wearing all of our masks much longer than they were intended. So, I do think that's true that the efficacy will depreciate over time, but it's still, of course, better than not wearing a mask.
Yes,
but Dr. Rohn, you're right. So when you wear, this does not apply to the N95s, but for the surgical mask, studies are very clear that when we talk, they get very moist. The more moist they get, the larger fibers, the larger particles are able to get in. So changing a mask frequently, except for the N95, that is the recommendation.
And Dr. Varner, thank you for bringing that up. The reason I brought that up is because now you can get these in bulk very cheaply. I go on Amazon, I get 50 for like $8. Mm-hmm. So they're really handy to have. And so I keep them in my car. And when I feel one getting kind of moist, as you said, it's time to change that mask, because I just got the feeling that I don't have as much protection as I would. Now for this one, our protocol is you can put it in a brown bag and keep using it intermittently I think it's for 3 weeks before not longer than you should, but that's what they tell us. And so we keep it in the brown bag and we just pull it out when we got to use it. So they're pretty good to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I use N95 and also the Korean version, the KN94. I use the Korean version because sometimes those 95s a little. Actually, the Korean version is better for my face because it actually goes underneath my chin. So I got this hair underneath my chin, so I want to make sure I keep everything. And so so it just fits better. But it works just as well. So please know that whatever mask that you're using, make sure you understand how that mask works.
Yes.
All right. Especially with just these face coverings and these, I think they're called gaiters or something like that. Mm-hmm. I can't wear that. I can't wear that in my clinic because it's too much cloth, and it's just, I don't see how that really is adding protection like a true mask would. All right. Varner, you want to say something because I'm about to get to the $1 million question. No? All right.
No, I was just listening. Great information.
All right, so we're about to get down to the $1 million question. I am so glad everybody has got all these questions. I'm going to try to get to all of them as much as possible, but I need to, in the next 15 minutes, get to the $1 million question because this is what it is all about, you all. So with all the information that has been talked about today, I'm going to ask these 3 doctors today on Ask the Doctors. I don't know if there's ever been, I don't know if this is a momentous occasion or if they've ever revealed it in public yet, but I'm going to ask them. I already told them to get ready. would you take the vaccine if it was offered to you today? That is the question, because that's what people want to know. And the reason why I want to take the next 15 minutes is because after you give your answer, people want to know why. And how you answer these questions, actually, I've seen how it steers people in the right direction. So, yes, that's the question. Would you take the vaccine today?
So,
Dr. Shepard, before Dr. Vaughn answers, would you take a look at Vanessa Reed's question? Make sure you earmark that one. That's an important one. And Dr. Quinn, yeah, that's a really important one, and that needs to be answered because that's part of the recommendations in certain fields of work.
Okay. Go ahead, sir. Answer. Go ahead and answer.
Oh, okay. So, and Jessica, you know more about this than I do, but there are certain studies that are showing that your eyes need to be protected because if someone is actively coughing or, sneezing in your presence in that 6 foot radius, sometimes it's even longer than that, the eyes are a potential portal of infection. So they're recommending that you have eyewear. This is particularly true for healthcare workers. I haven't heard for anybody else. I haven't heard eye protection being recommended when you're out in the community, but for healthcare workers, because we're in close proximity to people who actually have the potential to put out these respiratory droplets, our eyes need to be protected. So at least glasses, but goggles, yes. And in our clinic, our kids are wearing face shields. When I say kids, these young 23, 24-year-olds, MAs, they're wearing face shields along with this and this because they're trying to just make sure that they don't contract it. So eyewear protection is mostly recommended for healthcare people who are delivering healthcare in a close proximity to patients who are potentially infected. That's the only recommendation for eyewear. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Shepard.
Absolutely. I wear a face shield when I'm seeing patients up close. So, $1 million question. Dr. Varner, you're gonna kick us off.
Yeah. So let me just develop it. Let me just lead into it. Yes, we had to talk about the vaccine, but everyone just that they need to recognize that there are things that they can do to help prevent COVID. And for those of us who get COVID, 97% of us will home treat. There are 5 main vitamins that we actually give in hospitals that if you're being treated for COVID. I will attach a toolkit that you can see those vitamins. Now, let me just dispel just one myth, because this comes up. People are scared that the vaccine, that they're going to give you a microchip and they're going to track you. Well, just keep in mind that they could do that. I mean, they could have done that in food. They could do it in the medicines. They could have do it in the flu vaccine. They didn't have to wait for COVID vaccine. So everyone just keep in mind that if that is their concern, that could have been happened. Now, am I going to take the vaccine? Given that I am a split-second decisions person, expert, I break things down into consequences. The consequence of me not taking it or not recommending it to my family and having something bad happen to them all because of some gut feeling doesn't make sense. Or I can take it and something could happen. Although studies show that most people are doing just fine. I'm choosing to take it, and I'm going to recommend it to my family. And in fact, I got the first email from my hospital giving me a date when I will be getting the vaccine.
Oh man. All right. And we will have you back on right after you do it. Yes, absolutely.
Not sure you got jokes.
No. Oh no, I stay ready. Dr. Queen, $1 million question.
Yes, I will take the vaccine. So I agree. A big part of it is weighing the potential consequences of, an adverse effect from a vaccine versus the potential consequences of contracting COVID-19. Now, it's true that the vast majority of people who get COVID-19 will not have severe illness, will not die from it. But there are potentially, life-threatening consequences. And even for those who survive infection, we're seeing more and more people who have long-lasting sequelae. And for me, I think there are good reasons, good historical reasons why people have distrust or apprehension about vaccines or new therapies. But I'm a believer in vaccines. I think the combination of vaccines and antibiotics are a big part of why we're, living as long as we do now compared to 150 years ago. And so I plan to get it. I think we have the benefit of a rigorous system for testing new vaccines and for having them approved for distribution. And, these companies that are developing them, they have to present the data. And the data that I've seen is very good. So we have, I think, the most data so far on the Pfizer vaccine. It looks to be very effective, and it looks to be very safe. And the most common side effects that people reported were generally fairly mild to moderate, such as fevers, fatigue, muscle aches for a day or so. And that, to me, is a pretty low cost to have protection against potentially severe illness.
Sure.
Okay. Dr. Rome.
Well, I agree with my colleagues. When you're looking at, when we offer a treatment to a patient, we show them in two dimensions. First of all, is the risk outweighing the benefits? And so in this case, the risk of taking the vaccine, actually not taking the vaccine, is higher than the risk of taking it. So in that situation, risk versus risk, the lower risk is taking it versus going out there and saying, I'm going to be fine. Then you look at the benefits. Do the benefits outweigh the risk? And in this case, they do. The benefits of taking the vaccine, in my opinion, definitely outweigh the risk of whatever could happen to you, which Dr. Queen is telling us is, just little body aches and maybe a fever or something. And that doesn't happen to everybody. The other thing I would say, so yes, I'm going to take the vaccine. The other thing I would say is for those who are still living in the syndrome of conspiracy, that it's a good faith move in my opinion, that the first group to get the vaccine are going to be healthcare workers and those who are in skilled nursing facilities, particularly healthcare workers. Why would they do something that would potentially harm healthcare workers when we're the people leading the fight against treatment? They'll kill us. Everybody's going to be dead anyway. So the fact that you want to give it to doctors and nurses first, to me, is a good sign that the motives are pure and that they've done their due diligence, because they want to make sure that we don't get sick, so we are not incapacitated and can't help other people. So I think the Black community should take a look at that and say, if that's who's going to get it, that's good. On the other hand, I think that a lot of our African-American constituents are spooked because people like Bill Gates are coming out and saying, well, let's give it to Black people first. With that scared everybody, because it brought back the memories of the Tuskegee experiment, which I won't go into. So there's a distrust in the Black community with the government in healthcare, giving us healthcare. That's where all this is coming from. So I think when healthcare workers receiving the drug, I think that's a very good sign that it's going to be worthwhile receiving it. And I've been commissioned by the Church of God in Christ again to write another letter. This is my third letter to try to get pastors to encourage their people to receive the drug. So you're going to see a letter from Dr. Amos and myself pretty soon. Dr. Queen, I'm going to call you so you can help me. So we can give them a short note about why it's important for the people to take the vaccine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Dr. Shepherd, Miss Kimlia Sherman just asked a question that's kind of involved with this. Given that there are still so many unanswered questions and the potential long-term effects, why should we trust a vaccine developed so quickly without data regarding its long-term effects?
Right.
I have my comments, but I think that Dr. Queen is probably the expert in this. And I just know that in general for vaccines, the side effects happen within the first 8 weeks. Within the first 8 weeks. And to wait for long-term side effects means that there'll be hundreds of thousands of people dead. And let's just draw a line. There's a difference between a known side effect and a complication. For instance, most of these medications, which is similar to the flu, when you get it, you may have flu-like symptoms. You won't have the flu, but you may have flu-like symptoms. You may have body aches. You may have a slight headache. But just in terms of long-term complications, everyone just needs to know there is none of these companies have any data about long-term complications. Dr. Queen?
I mean, essentially what you said, when you worry about a serious sort of acute side effect or reaction to a vaccine, that will make itself clear very quickly. So, we currently have about 2 months of follow-up data, in particular for the Pfizer vaccine. I want to point out that trial is 40,000 people, half of which got the vaccine, half of which got placebo. The Moderna trial, similarly, 30,000 people. So there have already been a lot of people who have taken this vaccine, and there really have not been significant serious side effects. Really, it's comparable to other vaccines that we all take, annual flu shot, the typical childhood vaccines we give to our babies. So, in a sense, it's not a higher risk than other vaccinations that you accept. I think we have to put it in context that the reason for quick rollout is that we are experiencing an unprecedented global health event.
Yes.
Right. So we don't typically get vaccines out to market this quickly, but we don't typically have a novel, highly infectious virus that takes over the entire world in the course of months. That's killing millions of people.
Good point.
So again, talking about the risks and the consequences, this is a high stakes public health emergency. And the longer we delay putting out effective vaccines, the more people will die. And unfortunately, in particular in the United States, we missed a critical window where basic public health measures and prevention could have stopped this in its tracks. And now the horse is out of the gate. And so we have to rely on effective vaccination as a cornerstone of stopping this pandemic.
Absolutely. And I've read that even with the vaccines, and Dr. Varner already kind of alluded to this, it's like trying to put a fire out with a garden hose. And so please, ma'am, please, sir, just because you get the vaccine, I'm going to go to this next question, doesn't mean that you have to stop some of the mitigating factors. And so that has to be emphasized. Here's the question that was wanted to be asked next. Is it true that even if you receive the vaccine, you can still transmit or be infected with COVID? Is this because we don't know the life cycle of the vaccine? If this is the case, is the vaccine worthwhile getting?
So I can tackle this question. Excellent question. So currently what we know from the various vaccine studies is when we talk about how effective they are, we're talking about, are they effective at preventing symptomatic COVID? So that's sort of the major outcome that was studied in these trials. Do patients have symptoms paired with a positive COVID test? And then sort of a secondary outcome of those who do get COVID, do they get severe symptoms? So what we don't know yet, but I think will be studied and forthcoming, is does vaccination prevent asymptomatic infection, which we know makes up a large percentage of people who have the virus. And we don't know if it stops you from transmitting to other people. And we don't know yet how long the protection lasts. So there are still a lot of open questions. I do think it's still worthwhile to get the vaccine because, even if, say we're only preventing symptomatic infections, you're still drastically reducing the number of people with COVID, and therefore you're drastically reducing the spread in the community. So there's already a clear benefit. And if it turns out that protection is not long lasting, you might need to get booster vaccinations. And we do that with many other vaccines, that we already take. So that doesn't take away the fact that there's a clear benefit. It just leaves some open questions to study, as time goes on.
Absolutely. Dr. Varner, do you want to tackle anything with that, or I'm going to move to the next question?
I mean, Dr. Queen handled it well.
Okay. So let me talk a little bit about some of these other questions that are here. Some people are asking about the ingredients of the vaccine. And I know that certain ingredients, even for the flu vaccine, if you're allergic to eggs, for example, that they may advise you to be careful in getting that vaccine, as it could cause an allergic reaction. So the question here was, can you tell us the ingredients of the vaccine so we can research what it is made out of? And is there any way in which we can know if we're getting the vaccine, because of part 2, who's giving that vaccine or who produced that vaccine? So like if I show up at the hospital, do I know I'm getting the Pfizer vaccine versus the Moderna vaccine versus the AstraZeneca and the Oxford vaccine, or does it even matter? So it's a 2-part question about the ingredients of the vaccine, and are we able to know who was the person who produced that vaccine?
Well, where you go and get the vaccine, they can tell you what company it is from. But this question's come up in a lot of my forums, and I just encourage people to keep in mind that this is proprietary information. For instance, Pfizer and Moderna have had more attempted computer hacks in the last 2 weeks than ever. So I'm not sure if they're ever going to let us know what the ingredients are. But in another forum, this constantly came up, and I would just encourage people, don't set a different bar for this vaccine. Meaning, do people know what's in the flu vaccine? Do you know what's in your blood pressure medicine? I mean, those are all very interesting questions, but we have to be cautious about not setting the bar so high that that no one's able to like climb over it. Right.
Very good point. Very good point. Did you want to say anything else to that, Jessica, Dr. Coyne?
I agree with what Dr. Varner said. I would just add in terms of, which manufacturer, that to the person receiving the vaccine, it really doesn't matter. The FDA is only going to approve vaccines that are similarly highly efficacious and safe. So it won't matter to you. I think where it matters is some of the differences in cold storage needs, and then just the speed of manufacturing required doses. So it'll be, I think, a patchwork of different vaccines across the country, and they should all be similar in terms of, the benefit you receive as a patient.
Gotcha. This has been an awesome discussion. Man, this has been tremendous. And I mean, the comments has just gone forth. And Dr. Rohn, we knew he was going to be in and out because he's actually still working right now. So we appreciate him. What I do want to do, Dr. Varner, I did put up the crisis kit that you talked about. And so that is the website. So please take note of that. Please go there and get that valuable information. I know that the information that Dr. Varner has put out previously has been well thought after and has been very well received. And so I want to just highlight that right now. So please go ahead and do that. I'm going to give you two, Dr. Queen and Dr. Varner, kind of the last word, and then I'll just end this out on this afternoon. You can tell this is a discussion that we will have to have again. So please be ready, because it's just December. And remember, Dr. Varner, last time we had you on this particular episode, so much has changed in between October and December. And as they are forecasting that even with the vaccine, that by the time we come to January 2nd, that we will be over 300,000 people dead due to COVID-19. That is just unbelievable. And so what I want you all to do in these last moments here is just give a word of closure on how people should proceed moving forward over the next 60 to 90 days, and in particular for the holiday season. If you could just offer up a word of hope. The vaccines we've talked a lot about the death and dying, how to be safe. But I want people to know that there are physicians, Black physicians who look like many of you all out there, and I know everybody out there is not Black, and I'm thankful that you're not, because we are covering every single person, every single race, every single ethnicity. But we have to see people who look like us, who are providing insight and accurate information, and yet providing hope that we will get through this. And so let's start with you, Dr. Varner. What concluding message would you give to this audience today?
Is that I recognize that people are scared, they're a little anxious. And it's very and there's some people who are experiencing some PTSD. And I would just encourage you to just keep the faith and recognize that this too is going to pass. And as I think that you've heard me say, every crisis leaves it leaves a gift and it leaves a lesson. And when this is all over, there's a gift and there's a lesson in here for everyone. But what I would encourage you to do for those people whose faith is a little lacking, I would encourage you to think about a difficult time in your life when you weren't sure whether you were going to make it and you made it through. Why? Because you're here. And then keep in mind that 97.5% of people do just fine. They do just fine. And I'll just share with you. And by the way, any information that I give to my family members. I give to my loved ones. I give to my community. I give to my Hampton folks. I give to my Alpha brothers. But let me just tell you what I do just every morning. And I find it to be very good. I wake up every morning, and before I get out of bed, I think about 5 things that I'm grateful for. It can be something as simple as, oh, I'm grateful I have this cover. But I've noticed that I get out of bed in a different mood and ready for the day. And the download that I'm giving you about vitamins, just keep in mind, if you just combine the effects of vitamin D, zinc, and C, you can decrease the likelihood of you dying of COVID if you get it by up to 30%. So I would encourage you to take your vitamin D, your zinc, your melatonin, your vitamin C, and your vitamin B complex. And we're going to get past this. And the final thing is, do something nice for 5 people tomorrow. Just do something nice. Just do something simple and kind for them.
All right. I'll be expecting for my nice thing. Okay. You know how to reach me.
It's coming.
Dr. Quaid.
I think I want to say that I do want people to feel empowered to educate themselves about their health, about treatments, immunizations that they're going to accept. I think it's important to be informed, to advocate for yourself. I tell my family this, I tell my patients this. But I think sometimes we react in fear, and we turn to sort of other sources for information that aren't necessarily informed or accurate. So I hear people say things like, I'm not going to believe what the medical establishment or the government says. I'm going to do my own research. And by do my own research, they mean, watching YouTube videos or reading websites from who knows where.
You're right.
So I think we need to be a little bit more critical about what it means to do our own research. And I think, formats like this show that you have, Dr. Shepard, are an excellent resource because, as you said, we have professionals here willing to give our expertise, and we're, part of these marginalized communities that have historical distrust of medicine. And so, use us as allies and resources, and let that be your alternative, research and education. So, I want to echo what Dr. Varner said about faith. I'm a scientist, but I'm also a person of faith. And, I know a lot of people have been praying for an end to the surreal reality of 2020 and this pandemic. And I'd like to think that, the scientists and physicians and researchers that God has endowed with the talent and insight and intellect to develop treatments and vaccines, that he can use that to answer our prayers.
Amen. Amen.
So for me, I will, accept the immunization, the vaccine, with faith, that it's going to be part of how God sees us through this trying time. And I really hope that my family, my friends, members of my community do the same so that we can all celebrate together on the other side.
Absolutely. Well stated. Well stated. And I will answer this question. Yes, the question has been asked. I knew that was going to be asked. And I leave it to Michelle Timmons to ask that question. Oh, she gonna get me for saying that. But I will take the vaccine. I will be honest. When we probably talked back in October, Dr. Varner, it was a little shaky.
For the both of us.
Yeah, it was a little shaky. But let me tell you, I listened to what you just stated, Dr. Roan, Dr. Queen, Dr. Varner, and you just helped me to solidify my response. When I look at the risk of what I have seen happen in just 9 months versus me taking a risk on having a potential side effect, which, headache or some type of just uneasy feeling or just some swelling at the site of injection. No, I don't want to see anybody die from this horrible virus anymore. And we have to talk some more about this because SARS, which is part of the corona, this is not a new virus, you all. So we can talk a little bit about that. But yeah, this is not brand new. And so I want people to know that we can make it through this. And so as we make it through this, yes, I plan to take the vaccine. Yes, I plan to keep myself healthy. Sorry, can't go to brunch, sit in a restaurant anymore. Not until we get this thing under control. But I tell you, this has been such a helpful discussion today. I hope that you have left here insightful. Share this video. We want to make sure that this gets out, this information gets out. There's people out here who looking like us, who know what we're talking about, who want to save lives, who want to make sure that everyone comes out of this as successful as possible. Please be safe. If you plan to travel during the Christmas holiday season, make sure that you're traveling in a way that is responsible. Make sure that you're getting your COVID test before you travel. Make sure you get your COVID test once you come back from your destination. Because I know some people, they just got to travel. That's okay. But I want to make sure that if you're going to do it responsibly and do it safely. This is Dr. Jonathan Shepard, another edition of Ask the Doctor, sponsored by Hope Health Systems, which is located in Woodlawn, Maryland. You can call us if you're in need of direct care services. There was a question already about COVID-19 PTSD. And so that is up my alley. We're not going to deal with that today. You have to stay tuned. We will deal with more issues related to mental health. But this is a great kickoff, foundational setting for us to learn about the vaccine. And I pray that all of you all out there will get the vaccine and that you will utilize this episode for your research. And so that you will share this with all those who are out there. Direct care services, that's where I was at, 410-265-8737. That's where you can reach us, or go to hopehealthsystems.com and we'll do you some good if you come on by. All right. Thank you once again. Please stay safe, wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands. Thank you all and have a blessed weekend. We'll see you next Friday, 6 p.m.